Ta-da! We did it. Can you believe that? I did it. I don't know why I got this red block on my screen, people. And I see that I've got some image that's put forward, and Annie's gonna have to walk me through on how to get rid of that. But but we're here at least. Annie, do you see on the screen where if you're looking on live that there's a red block on the screen where we were trying to put something? Okay. It's a red outline. Yep. All right. Welcome to the outline show, people. Well, I hope you guys can tune in. Here we go again. You guys can start saying something. Here we go, Leah. Good morning, Diana. Good morning. I'm glad. If anybody, if that other chat is open, to go in there and say go to a new one. Thank you. Good morning, Marty. How you doing? So I always like to start with a verse. I love how the Bible app kind of pulls out something, and it's amazing how it fits. It says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful." I feel pain this morning, right? Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. That's out of Hebrews 12:11. So, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Well, you guys want to talk discipline? I think today we're going to talk a little bit about sugar regulation, and that can be an aspect of discipline. And this little red block right here is going to drive me crazy. I'm going to see if I can at least size it. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to put a nice red dot in the corner. Oh, now I opened up a blue one instead. Ah! Click off. Oh, I see. It's where I put my cursor. Oh, guess what? My desktop audio says that OBS was off. So I hope you guys were able to hear me for the last 5 minutes.
Hey,
So,
you're good.
okay. So, a little bit
Maybe
changed.
not.
I hope
Actually, no, Doc, they haven't been hearing you.
Oh no. Okay. Well, good morning.
No.
Let's start over again. You guys heard me go through all that stuff and saw some changes. And now I had OBS. I had it kind of muted, so now we're back. And
You're good.
this is this is why Annie does the background scenes, and I do this. Annie, any
I
comments?
do have value. I do have value.
Oh, more than me at times. So I love to start with a verse, and I like to see how uh, this Bible app always seems to fit an application. And today is from Hebrews 12:11. It says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." And I hate to say it, but if you kind of listen to what I'm trying to teach you guys, it is a discipline. It's a lifestyle. It's something that you are tending probably not to hear from other places. And I just hope that you find it beneficial and that there's something here that you're really enjoying. But today I want to talk a little bit about sugars, and when we're looking at it, sugars are your potential energy, bottom line. And I'm going to go, and Annie is helping me create these little thumbnails, which are really quite awesome. And I'm going to go and I'm going to put up this thumbnail, and it's going to pop up on the side because today we are going to talk about. Oh, I clicked the stupid bricks. There we go, bricks, perfect equation. I hope you guys can see that. So we're going to Andy's creating these little thumbnails to kind of give an understanding and just give a visual picture. I'm going to move this over so you can still see me fairly well. And uh, perfect equation. When we're looking at the bricks is that first number out of that series of numbers. And it's given us the idea of what we call sugar regulation. And bottom line, where it says there is that if you understand how to control sugar regulation, you understand how to maximize potential energy. That's a big statement, people, because you have to realize that when we're looking at this equation and how we're looking at measuring people and what you're doing at home, we're looking at how energy moves through the body. That first number, the bricks, represents the potential energy. The pHs of the urine and the saliva give us an idea of the efficiency of how the body's doing. The urine pH is the total efficiency and the speed of what the body's processing things. The saliva pH gives an idea of the strength of the liver bile and how well your body's able to just transfer, um, you know, food into energy. The conductivity value gives us the ability of energy to get from point A to point B and how well that energy is moving through. And we're going to talk about salts and those type of things later on. Cell debris gives us an idea of the energy going out and the kidneys processing and eliminating the waste. And then the nitrates give us an idea of how the body's using food to break down um, uh, into amino acids and nitrates that are used for protein building or for destruction, protein breakdown. So when you're looking at the bricks, though, which I want to talk to today, you know, you're looking at the aspects of basic sugar available sugar. How do I say it? Sugar is potential energy, and and sugars are associated and directly correlate with your oxygen availability on a cellular level. So if you have low sugars, there's not going to be enough oxygen. And if you have high sugars, your oxygen's getting displaced by that sugar. And so it's still not available. So oxygen's essential for life, essential for everything. And we know, like cancer, for example, it thrives in low oxygen environments. Your body switches over to a glycolysis and it basically starts generating through gluconeogenesis. It starts generating its own source of sugar regulation and energy, and separate from what the body's providing it. So oxygen's really available. Um, being available, it helps in that restorative aspect of health. So the one thing that that Dr. Badeau and they would teach is that sugar regulation and its ability, or just if you understand, I don't know how to say this, but um, sugars can cause the most impact on your life and well-being. If you have predictable and potentially severe symptoms when you have sugar dysregulation, you can have fatigue, mood swings, anger episodes, phobias, heart rhythm irregularities, dizziness, motion sickness, vertigo, morning sickness, spacey feelings, suicidal depression, body aches, temperature sensitivities, headaches, sleepiness after meals, not sleeping well, insomnia. I mean, the list goes on. Just
Tinnitus on that list?
tinnitus is not specific on that list. Tinnitus, I typically find that there's a zinc deficiency with tinnitus and there's some nerve irritation. So if you are having poor sugar regulation and conductivity ratios out, that could be associated with why you're having that tinnitus. I don't. So so when you're looking at the sugars, at a Brix of 1.5 in that perfect equation, Reams suggested and showed that hey, the maximal amount of oxygen carrying capacity is found in the blood when you're at a Brix of 1.5. You're just making oxygen available. So I try to give you this practical way of looking at that equation, that the bricks, that first number, is giving you an idea of the health of your blood and its ability to get oxygen where it needs to be. Okay, so the potential of that oxygen being where it needs to be is there, sets the stage. If you control sugars, other things will start falling in place to some degree. If you're eating a ton of sea salt, your conductivity's up, then you're not going to see that sugar get where it needs to be because your blood's going to get thick. It's going to want to agglutinate, and there's other things that go along with it. And that's why we look from a mathematical perspective of how this whole picture of numbers gives us a picture of what's happening in the body. So again, if you have a Brix of less than 1.5, you have decreased available oxygen, and there's a lack of needed oxygen. If you have a Brix of greater than 1.5, sugars are displacing it, and you have decreased oxygen availability. Both of them sore, tired, and achy. They do have a little bit different set of symptom patterns. And when we see low sugars, we see lightheadedness, dizziness, extreme fatigue, muscle aching, Most people are crashing, that mid afternoon, like, oh my God, I can't wake up. I need to eat some sugar. Give me something. I need, just those adrenal fatigue crashes. You'll see headaches, really nasty headaches, migraine headaches when you see low sugars. Again, I mentioned seizures. I've had people who have had seizures and they learn sugar regulation and they stop having seizures. So it really is amazing if you learn to control your sugars and what that can do. We talk, like I said, sugar crashing. I don't know how many of you have, eat the chocolate or go for the sugar sweets, and then an hour later you're like, oh my God, I need to do something. Give me a cup of coffee, or I'll have another candy bar. Forgetfulness, low sugars, low oxygen. Hey, what was I getting out of that refrigerator? I'm going to go upstairs and grab my keys. Get upstairs and you're looking everywhere and try to remember what you went upstairs for. Being cold, that's an interesting one because Dr. Ream showed that as sugars break down, what happens is they create an alcohol. And there's an alcohol that's given off as with sugar breakdown, and that those alcohols generate heat. So Dr. Ream showed that there's a direct correlation with your body temperature regulation and sugar availability. So then, what about high sugars? High sugars, foggy brain. I can't think. My brain just won't work. I can't get that thought out of there. Oh my God, I was just talking about that. It's right there, and you're talking to me, people, and you're like, that thing. I want to tell you about. You just can't get it out. And that's that foggy brain, high sugars. Those are sugars. When your sugars go high, it's usually you're eating foods that you're not supposed to eat. It's usually poor sugar regulation, but food sensitivities. You eat foods that you're not supposed to eat, and boom, those sugars, skyrocket high. Cluster headaches, muscle aches, numbness in extremities, because with high sugars, you typically see high salts. And so you'll get numbness and tingling because you're getting the irritation where the correlation of the sugars and salts kind of follow one another. And as the salts go up, the salts irritate the nerves, and then the lack of oxygen from low sugars and availability leads to numbness and tingling in the extremities. Rapid heart rates, again, low sugar availability. And again, you're going to see that blood getting thick because it's up, and that thickening of the blood stresses the heart. Nervousness, insomnia, morning wait. I don't want to get out of bed. A lot of times you'll see grogginess in the morning, and you'll see people who are waking up at night needing to pee quite often. So when we're looking at that aspect, it's kind of, I don't know how to, where to go with that, but hold on a sec. Yeah, so I uh, there's a lot of symptoms when we're looking at things that we can follow. Here, if I click here, I can see the chat, I think. Oh, yes, I can. So one of the things, I always want to see if you guys have any questions as we start this, because we're kind of going in to, if we're going to go back into teaching this equation, you guys have to have an understanding of some basics. And the sugar regulation is where it all starts. If you start a RBTI program and start doing some of the things that we're talking about, bottom line, you got to learn to regulate your sugars. If you don't learn to regulate your sugars, your numbers are going to go all over the place. And that Brix value, that sugar value, is telling you, am I drinking enough water and am I eating the wrong foods? It's that simple. You eat the wrong food, and if it's a food allergy, boom, it's gonna spike. You are gonna see those that Brix value kick up 5.5 and above. You eat pork, it's gonna go up to about 7. When you get above 7.15, you're going to see your body's acting like a diabetic. It can't functionally handle the high sugars from that load. And so, yes, I mean, the sugar regulation is step number one. Do not chase your pH and try to pop more vitamin C or vitamin D or more calcium to move those pHs until you get some type of control of your sugar regulation. Um, let's see. So we have good morning, Red Label. Good morning, Patty, Linda, Nature Ninja. I like that. Good morning, Annie. Annie, good morning to all. Patty and Linda, again, we have been hearing you fine. So you heard me for the first set, but on my OBS it was showing that my I was muted, so I didn't know if you did hear me. So start it over. Linda, how do ketones affect oxygen blood levels and the body's process of making energy rather than using glucose? I keep carbs below 20 milligrams a day. Does that provide enough glucose needed by the body? What happens is ketones become your source of energy and they're getting broken down for available glucose. And so when you watch people and you're watching the bricks, you will still see that if you go ketogenic, that your bricks value tends to go high. You'll tend to see people who are trying to go ketogenic and they'll maintain um, a bricks usually, I don't know, four, three and a half, 4.5, somewhere around there, and they're just not drinking enough water, because your body still has to process those things out. So you're just changing your body's source of getting those carbohydrates. If you think about it, all protein, fat, carbohydrates. If I pulled up a Krebs cycle and a biochemistry chart, you'd see that you have glucose and glycogen. You have glycogen coming down and it's forming pyruvates, and then before it drops into the Krebs cycle, and basically you're taking uh, fats get converted to triglycerides, and then all of those get formed into an intermediate that acts as a sugar to be dropped in. So everything gets converted to a sugar before it's actually functionally utilized in the Krebs cycle for making energy. So you're just changing your energy source when you're going to a ketogenic diet. As you're looking at ketogenic, people who do well with that, Leah, drinking more water tends to bring the bricks down. Yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So you drink more water, you lower your bricks, particularly that distilled water. You're flushing out the body, and that's how we regulate the bricks. So when we're going into this, the idea is that I just lost my stupid screen. Um, the idea is when you're uh, as you start drinking water and learning how to drink in a rhythm, we talk about, Reams teaches that we're supposed to turn around and drink rhythmically. So you take your body and you take your body weight divided by two, and we drink roughly that many ounces of water. But Reams also said that we really shouldn't have more than about 80 ounces of distilled water a day. So people who are, 100, 250, 300 pounds, 80 ounces of distilled water might not cut it. I usually have people max out at about 96, about 3 quarts, and sometimes I will drive some people up to about a gallon of distilled water in a day, depending on weight. But these are typically people who are heavier. I have some athletes who are, 250 pounds, and they need that gallon of water a day with what they're doing. And so, but one thing I'm going to tell you is you got to be aware, as I explain the concepts of sugar regulation and how you can gain energy, you got to realize that you have to have adequate amounts of detoxification on the back end to handle that. So when you have people who just are not able to process their waste, and you just keep maintaining that healthy sugar level, it will kind of catch up over time because, again, you monitor your sugars, the other numbers will follow, but you will start to detoxify. And if you can't handle that waste, you can get sick. And that's why this is not hey, get a refractometer, control my sugars, and I'm going to have more energy. It will work. You'll feel a difference. But if you're unable to get rid of the waste and you're not keeping track of adequate waste to your salts, your cell debris, your nitrogen byproducts, that demonstrates that you can handle that waste, that increased energy generation can cause accumulation of a burden of waste. Where last week, we looked at a chart to explain restorative health, and in that chart, we're looking here. We're looking. I'm going to put up this. I'm going to take this off for a second. Let's put this restorative health up. Let's take that off. Look at this, Annie. I'm doing it. So when you
Hmm,
guys, when you guys look
checking you.
at this model, I want to hear that comment.
I'm checking you to make sure.
Oh, thank you. So when you guys look at the model that I put up last week, on the left side of this restorative health, you got stress, and spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, environmental, even, which leads to a microbial stress, this microbiome issue in the body. And so that stress, you go up to a threshold, that blue line, and when you get above that threshold, you've got symptoms. And that's where Reams explained that as you exceed your as you're consuming more energy than what you're getting from your food, bottom line, you're going to have disease start. You're going to have symptoms that start. And this is, in naturopathic medicine, they teach the total load theory. You exceed your load and your body can't handle it. So when you start a program, that program is not just sugar regulation, people. That program is looking at what we call a five-phase mentality that looks at both cleaning up your environment, quality, pure air, pure food, pure water, electromagnetic field, EMF protection, those type of things. It's testing yourself for what am I sensitive to? How do I avoid my known sensors? Am I, do I need to stop swimming in the pesticide vat every day? You got to figure out what your load is and lower that load specifically, and then you start supporting yourself. And as you notice at that where that black line, that threshold has a stair step up towards an optimal threshold. And so as you take the right supplements, as you're taking what your body needs, you're effectively enhancing your body's efficiency, which turns out and equates to a an improved, an increased threshold. Hey, I can now handle more stress because my body has what it needs to take care of this a little bit more effectively. So you're lowering the load with the quality of your lifestyle. You're increasing your threshold by taking the right supplements. And in the meantime, you can see at the bottom there's a reserve energy that's coming up as a arrow, because as you start taking the right mineral supplements, you start remineralizing while your body's detoxifying. And then what we're doing is we're going to go into ranges, and we're going to talk about those ranges later on how those ranges play an effect on what we're doing and what we are and how we feel. So sugar regulation is key, people. And the way that you do sugar regulation is is aspects of getting into a rhythm and how you're drinking your water and how you're eating. So Reams always talked about breakfast for a queen, lunch for a king, dinner for a pauper. Um, and so I've been breaking that down. Some of you, I think Earth Garden Living got my new handout. And or did we send it to you? If I didn't, I apologize. But the idea is, if you think about that breakfast for a queen, you can eat some carbs, have some fruit. That's where some people do oatmeal with some fruit, stuff like that. But if you look at the ranges, you'll see where you need the protein to slow things down. I'm trying to break it down into potential energy with your diet. So if you're saying that you're supposed to generate energy based upon breakfast for a queen, and you have 100% of your calories for the day, I say eat about 30% of your calories for breakfast, about 50% for lunch, and have only about 20% for dinner, which is opposite of what most of us do. We turn around and eat these huge dinners. And so
Hmm.
the idea is that you have the energy when you need it. So you putting the body in a rhythm is the key. You consistently eat your meals at near the same times, and then you're drinking water in a rhythmic way, roughly every 30 minutes. And we drink distilled water, and we can go into that at another time as well, because distilled water electrically has no memory, and it goes into your body as a frequency. It's an energy frequency that's going on, and water that has no frequency and not carrying minerals or anything in it that carry a frequency actually goes in and adapts to your body frequency more readily. And so it actually works to dilute and to help to hydrate and to help wash out some of this stuff. So you start systematically drinking water, roughly a half an ounce or a half a cup, roughly 4 ounces every half hour. Usually that historical aspect of drink, let's drink 8 glasses of water a day, it kind of equates to that. So if you drink 4 ounces every half hour for 8 hours of the day, that's 8 cups a day, and that's a half a gallon of water. And a lot of people that's good for, because most people fall in what we call sugar crashing, and and their sugar, Reams called it the zone of misery. The sugars fall somewhere between you know zero point 0.5 up to about 5.45. And what happens is you're the ones who your sugars can change at any moment, like rapidly. And so if you start drinking water systematically and you start flushing those sugars and you're not eating appropriately to maintain those sugars, like the DE range people, they need those fats and proteins to slow things down. And we'll go over all this stuff later, but you need the BC people, everything's already going too slow, and they need the carbohydrates, they need the vegetables and the lower amounts of protein and fat to kind of make sure that things can speed up a little bit. And so as you start drinking water systematically, if you're more of a BC person and and you're trying to speed up your diet and you're eating carbs, but they're not sustaining your sugars, and you're drinking that water systematically, bam, you're a crasher. You're going to hit bottom and you're going to feel it. And so people who are crashers, I tend to turn around and put a little juice in the water. And if people are in the BC range and they're higher pHs, I tend to give cranberry juice. And if people are in the DE range, we tend to use grape juice. I find that pear juice is okay. I find that pineapple juice seems to be working, but pineapple juice also has an effect on the salt, so you got to work it. So we got to watch for that. So when we're looking um, uh, at doing this, if you look at that ideal equation, the um, uh, the sugar to salt ratio is a 1 to 4.3 ratio, and so we always go by all the numbers and not the bricks. But for sugar regulation, again, it's what you eat. If you're eating the wrong foods, boom, you either spike up, or if you eat the wrong carbohydrate, your pancreas oversecretes insulin and you crash. And so you got to figure out what sugars and what can I not eat. And then number two, when you're looking at that sugar to salt ratio, that helps with the efficiency of that energy getting where it needs to be and that oxygen getting where it needs to be. So you will definitely notice a difference of people who have good sugar regulation and high salts. They'll be nervous. You'll have that static electricity and be like, you're feeling nervous all the time. So the key is that consistent drinking, every 3 to 4 hours. There's a lot of other things that play a role here. We turn around and we put in the equation, where you're adding lemons and lemon. I tell people to drink that lemon water, roughly 1 ounce of lemon water, fresh squeezed lemon, to 9 ounces of distilled water. And then you're drinking 3 ounces of that after every meal. Why? Because that lemon's going to stimulate the digestion. And if you're a sugar crasher, we make it lemonade. Put a teaspoon of sweetener in that 10 ounces. And that sugar that's in there, again, when you're eating, is going to keep those sugars from crashing out on you. So I don't want to feel like I'm turning around and rambling, but I want to see, you guys have any um, any questions? I see that I can't see how many viewers or anything that's out there, and I hope everybody found the new stream and the old one, kind of disappear. I haven't made it disappear yet, but any questions here? I do see, Leah, a lot of cell debris, good or bad. A lot of cell debris, good or bad, is depending on all the other numbers. You can't just turn around and it is a sign that your kidneys are working, but it can be a sign that your kidneys are working too hard. And so, Annie, you have any comments? Because I'm just kind of feeling like I'm rambling at some point to whether I'm teaching this or not.
Definitely not rambling. It's all good information. I mean, I think it's all everything. I'm like, oh, mention this, and then you do. So, I mean, I think that you're going right along with what you need to as far as bricks goes and sugar regulation. I think that it was important for you to mention, the drinking water and the salt issue because that's a lot of my problem. Whenever I started eating kosher salt and took away the sea salt, my numbers finally started, balancing out and doing their thing. So I'm a crasher. I live in that world too. So the juice in my water, it's not there today, but at least I am drinking my water. I find whenever I do get into that routine, my life is a lot easier. My inflammation levels are down, my nervousness is lower, and I didn't realize that that was a symptom because I'll get the shakes and man, I keep them. And a lot of times I guess that's my pain too, but no, it's a big deal. It's a homework assignment to drink water, like you're saying, every half hour, take a gulp. It's like I have to set an alarm on my phone to make sure that I do this. But for 9 hours of the day, it is a long time as you're guzzling water. Yeah.
Right.
It's a hard thing to do, but I found that the simplest things had the most impact for me, especially whenever I first started doing your program. Just focusing on my water and not eating carbs was a big deal. Like drink your water, regulate your sugar, and that's it. And it made a huge difference for me. So I love what you're saying. I don't think you're rambling a bit.
Good, good. So, um, let's see what we have here. Okay, just checking my cell phone. So I'm looking for any other questions and things like this because when we're talking about the aspects of sugar regulation, when we at some point we're going to break this stuff down and we're going to go into um, uh, each variable is the first step is walking you through this and then going into application, and that's where the handouts that I've been working on that goes over and shows prominent calciums based on what range you fall in, understanding how to look at your range when you run a set of numbers and say, okay, here's my energy efficiency. That gives an outline of how I should be eating my foods. So when you're in the DE range, although it'll say you want to minimize like nuts, or you want to minimize too much meat protein because you're just not digesting it as well as you ought to, and you'll notice that people in the DE range, if they eat too much meat, their ammonia levels go up, and it stresses the heart out a little bit, and there's things that follow along with that. But you'll also find that when you're in that DE range, and particularly with poor sugar regulation and pH, you actually need those. You actually need that protein. That protein is going to help you to regulate your sugars. Things are going too fast. The protein and fat need to slow it down. And so sometimes we find that like a paleo diet or something to that effect can really be beneficial for some people. Some people do keto. Like we had Linda mentioning that keeping her carbs down to less than 20 milligrams a day, and it's probably 20 grams per day. But that's a lot. That's not a lot of carbs. It depends on how many total calories you're doing. I'm going to teach you guys how to calculate, um, your basal metabolic rate. Based upon that basal metabolic rate, then you can turn around and determine what range you're in, which tells you um, from a what did Wolcott, metabolic typing, where you have fast oxidizers and slow oxidizers and mixed oxidizers, and you'll find that the fast oxidizers correlate with the DE diet because the pHs dictate that things are moving too fast. And the slow oxidizers correlate with the BC diet, and the mixed oxidizers correlate with the A range, where you can mix your foods and find that your body can utilize that energy a lot better. So I'm gonna, we're just gonna keep carrying down and keep moving forward on this. But let's see. I mean, if there's no other questions, I don't have a lot more to. Have we only been on for 35 minutes?
Oh yeah, I guess we have. It's 10:50 though. I was like, oh, we're right in line. It's almost 11.
Yeah, well,
Forgot
and I think that's
on
that's that 20 minutes we lost with technical difficulties because of me running the studio. So,
time. Sorry.
but let's see. It says, any other questions out there? Zoltan, what to eat instead of a candy bar? I think I would wonder if anybody out there can give him a quick answer to that. I mean, there's a lot of things out there to eat instead of candy. Um, you know, we have a lot of people who are looking for something processed and trying to go for protein bars or something to that effect. You know, nuts are fine. I love almonds, walnuts. If you are, Reams had people boil the nuts because he found that they couldn't digest them very well. I do find that people who are in that DE range and are eating nuts, they'll say that they see pieces of nuts in their stools. So yeah, it's because you're not breaking them down as well. But I like almond butter. Almond butter is something to eat. Have a banana with almond butter on it. Have hummus with some vegetables. Cucumber slices or tomato or carrots, celery, something like that. I used to always love peanut butter, and I still love peanut butter, but because of my mold issues, peanut butter makes me get congested, and I think that because there's so many mycotoxins in peanuts, and if we can find a mycotoxin free peanut butter, please tell it to me, and I'll get it. And people say, well, buy organic peanut butter. Well, organic peanut butter is more likely to have more mold than non organic because they at least spray the other peanuts with fungicides to keep it from growing mold. So we discussed that issue on the mold show with people drinking organic wines. So, so
I think another I think another important thing, I don't know, whenever I think about sugars and all that, I think about the horse cribbing analogy that, I don't know, I saw a show and a vet was dealing with a horse that was chewing on its environment or on its, stable there, and they call it horse cribbing. And he was doing that because he's deficient. So I like to think that, when you start regulating your body and your, what do you want to call it? Threshold comes up, your sugar regulation gets a little easier when your deficiencies are taken care of and things like that. So I think that sugar regulation has gotten easier for me, but whenever I fall off, of course it's harder, but I don't know. That's my thought.
oh,
Any
completely, yeah. I agree. I find that I am not an every half hour water drinker. I go in and off. I have learned through awareness of when I can feel my sugars going low, and I can tell when my sugars are a little bit too high from eating the wrong food. I'm like, okay, I got to drink more water, and I've found the associated thirst with it. So when I go and test my bricks during the day, and I usually run about 1.8. It's 1.8 to 2.2. And so I tend to be pretty self-aware. And there's times when I just get strict, and I'll put myself on a timer if I'm doing fasting or something like that at times. But for the most part, it becomes so much easier after you learn how to get it under control. Um, Linda says, can sugar regulation affect restless leg syndrome? I take magnesium and potassium, but still sometimes have issues in the evening that are very uncomfortable. Well, oxygen availability, heck yeah, bottom line. It certainly can play a role. You do need to test your full set of numbers and look at your nitrates, because what happens with some people is even if you have poor sugar regulation, you're not going to have efficiency with how you're pulling your minerals out of your foods. And so you can turn around and be taking all the mineral supplements, but just have expensive poop because you're pooping them right out because your body is not utilizing those minerals. So if your saliva pH is not falling in line, that's where people love to talk about one variable. Hey, we're talking about sugar, so let's talk about, can I eat sugar? What do I do instead of the candy bar? Can it cause this? Yeah, but it's not the one number. It's how those numbers are working together. And that's what I overall hope at some point that you guys get out of this. We're going to definitely talk about sugars, and then next week probably talk about pHs, and then celebrate and just go, or conductivity, and just go down the line. But bottom line, you affect one of these numbers, you're affecting all of them, and you need to have an understanding of what you're doing, and not to the aspect of where you need to be a scientist and watch all these things. But when you eat, how do the numbers change? When you're drinking water, or when you're drinking green tea, or when you're drinking kombucha, or when you're drinking whatever that might be considered healthy, what does it do to your numbers? So kombucha is going to spike them up. You're going to bring your numbers up a little bit. Is there good stuff in there? Yeah, but it's also acid forming. You're going to watch your pH dive, so you're gonna spike up your sugars. You're going to speed things up a little bit, but you're getting some good bacteria out of it, right? That's what we're looking at, And so we can't we can turn around and glorify certain food substances as superfoods and stuff like that, but bottom line, RBTI is a system of measurement where you can find out whether that good recommendation is a good recommendation for you. And so that's the issue, is we're trying to identify the specifics of how these things affect you. So Jackie says, thank you for going back to the basics. Please consider a show in future that covers patterns. I will consider a show that covers patterns. Patterns, is really, when you're talking about doing shows and you're doing a single show on something, it's hard to kind of go back and explain that when people don't understand all the numbers. So going back into basics is important. And if you listen to the shows, you'll typically hear me associate one number with another. So I hope I kind of bring that into label. Apple, celery, and carrots. Heck yeah. There you go, Zoltan. You got some recommendations. Have an apple. Celery is really high in oxalates, so you got to watch if you are those moldy people who don't process oxalates, and you form kidney stones easy. And oxalates are an issue that you don't hear about in the RBTI world. You just hear in the RBTI world of people getting aches and pains and being told to drink more water to make sure that their body can flush out the waste and control the sugars in the process. So which I didn't. I was talking about putting juice in my water. So if I have, this is a liter bottle, which is just over a quart. You're looking at 33 ounces. I would turn around and I'd put half a cup of juice in this water. I'd drink it down to about where it is. Put 4 ounces of juice in here, and then I'd make that the water that I get a sip of roughly every 30 minutes. A couple gulps an hour. You'll figure out as you do this and get sugar regulation how it controls. But those of you who are sugar regulators, that will change your lives. I've had so many women who go to work and they say, 10 o'clock comes along, I'm starting to feel like I have to start shoving candy in my face to keep myself from crashing or eating something. And I'm like, just put some juice in your water. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, if your pHs are high, put 4 ounces of cranberry juice, water down, and roughly twice an hour, do a gulp of that. That 60 to 80 calories of juice over a 5-hour period. You're going to drink this roughly 3-4 ounces every half hour. If you're drinking 3 ounces every half hour, that's 6 ounces an hour. 6 goes into 35 hours. To drink almost a quart, 5.5 hours. So it depends on how much you're drinking. And so that little bit of juice in that water every half hour keeps your sugars from crashing. It keeps you from getting those migraines. It keeps you from having seizures. It keeps you from feeling like you're crashing and can't thinking. It's amazing what a little bit of sugar can do. And then you're going to have the people out there that say, but I have candida. You're going to overgrow, and I'm going to have all this stuff grow inside of me, and it's going to kick out all my symptoms. No, it's not, because you're using that as energy source. You're not just feeding the bugs, and there's other things that you can do, because the way that you got to get rid of candida is you have to learn pH control that we'll talk about next week, because we're talking about the environment. So you have a healthy environment for yeast. And if you feed them sugar, they'll thrive. But pH is affecting that environment. And how do you affect pH? The foods that you eat and the minerals that your body's getting in there. It's really the calcium that's playing a role there. So, Jackie, can we apply the same rules for the bricks on our pets? Yeah, you can. Ream showed that biological, when he said biological optimization, that you will find that that pH regulation and that bricks regulation on your pets will definitely give you an idea of whether you'll notice, pets know when to drink. They get in tune to that, but you will see, particularly on pH control. He said that biological systems optimize at 6.4 of a pH that urine. So if you catch your dog or cat's urine, I don't know how you catch cat urine. They're pretty finicky of letting you do that. But dogs go out there and squat, and you catch them at the right time, you can catch it. But you check that pH of a dog urine, and you'll see whether their food's making them too acidic or too alkaline, and you can adjust things, and you can adjust what you're giving your dogs based upon that. Annie was asking me this morning if I could make up some petalometry for her dogs and take vital,
Yep.
because it's amazing what it's done for the dogs that I have made it for. I plan on becoming one of your bricks Padawans. Haha. Work on that bricks control. Why, that's the one thing that if you're checking your numbers, that every time you pee, check your bricks. Just keep a cup, pee, put a drop of urine on there, check it, wipe off your refractometer, and be done with it. You can check that if you have a digital refractometer, it's lovely. You always make sure it's calibrated with distilled water. Never hit zero while you have urine on there, or your refractometer will read off of that value from that point forward. So if you have a digital refractometer, always put distilled water in it, hit zero, then check it. We have people inevitably who have digital refractometer and have these wonky readings that just don't correlate with their conductivity. And I'm like, you have a 1 to 2 1 to 2 ratio with your sugar to bricks. Have you calibrated those? Your conductivity meter? They're like, yeah, I calibrated it. And I'm like, okay, then your bricks. Have you calibrated your refractometer? And they're like, well, I got a digital one. I'm like, do you zero it to distill water? They're like, well, not every time. I'm like, have you ever accidentally hit zero while your urine is on there? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, you need to know that, because if you had a bricks of, if you had a bricks of, 0.8 or zero, whatever it is, and you zero your refractometer to that, every value from that point forward that you hit read is going to be based upon that as your 0 point. And they turn around like, oh, and they boom, right back to normal. So just be aware of that. Jackie, I've just bought 4 bunches of celery to juice. Going to see what happens. Celery is fine to juice. Just if you're that celery, and there's people out there who are really promoting celery as celery, beets, and carrots are the staples for juicers. Um, just celeries are high in oxalates. Just watch out. Celery will, if you're a kidney stone former, that celery, the people who are doing celery and spinach all the time, watch out for the kidney stones. Watch out; those oxalate stones can form in any tissue if you're not regulating your calciums appropriately and by watching your pHs. So that's just something to be aware of. I purchased the top of the line kits. I'm overwhelmed in the testing process. Can you provide tips besides your great YouTube video to help me not be overwhelmed? Patty, I don't know where the overwhelm. If you turn around and pee in a cup and you take that little dropper, take some urine and you put it on all 3 of your meters, you've got 3 of your values. Rinse off the pH one, the pH meter with the water bottle, and then spit in it. Now you got 4 values. And with the conductivity value, you just got to multiply what your meter reads by 1.43. That gives you your conductivity value. And then look through it with the light, and that's how you get your fifth value, your cell debris. And then the other one is the nitrates, and that's the one that takes a little bit of effort, and you got to be careful. You put 1 drop of urine, 6 drops of that universal extract, mix it 120 times. Take 1 drop of that in each one of those wells, and then you put 4 drops of those 2 nitrate solutions around it, making sure you don't spill that one that's acid. And then you set your timer. You read the yellow one in the first 45 to 60 seconds, and at 5 minutes, you read the blue one. So I don't know. I mean, we could do a video consult at my office. I could turn around and run a set of numbers in front of you, and show you how we do that. Um, all I can do is encourage you not to be overwhelmed. Those values are very simple. You just put the urine on the meters and you rinse them off. Make sure when you're doing that pH meter, we had somebody just buy a pH meter literally 2 weeks ago, and we tell you, do not touch that glass. Do not touch it. Do not wipe that out. Just rinse it off with distilled water right after you use it. You can take a piece of tissue and just let the tissue kind of wick it, but do not push on that. And she broke that glass in the first 2 weeks of having that meter. And I went online and found her a link for the cheapest replacement for um, that meter was $80, and normally they're about 115. I found one for $80, and I sent her a link. So, but don't be. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're feeling overwhelmed. Watch that video that we did multiple times to how after I record the bricks, where to record it. Write the equation out always the same way. Brix value first, urine pH over saliva pH. Then do conductivity, where you multiply the value on your conductivity, the red meter, by 1.43. Put that as your C value. Look through the urine, get your value for your cell debris, write that, and then the blue nitrates, it goes over the yellow nitrates when you're writing those values out. And then when you write out that equation, that sheet of paper that I sent you, Patty, that talks about, and I even think I may have even sent you the newest version of it. I'm not certain, but that talks about looking at understanding ranges. You look at that graph on the front that has range A in the center, BC above, and DE below, and then you look at the values across the top, and you take your equation straight across and say, okay, where's my bricks? What value does it fall in? And then go straight across that chart or that table and say which one of my values falls the furthest away from that range A, and that's D and E are the lowest, and that tells you what range you're in. But I kind of adjusted a little bit based upon diet. When I'm looking at diet and choosing the BC versus the DE range, I want you to learn sugar regulation and not take low sugars as putting you in the E range when you have high pHs. Because if you have high pHs, you need to eat based upon the BC range, but you have got to learn sugar regulation. So we eat really based upon the pHs to choose the what range we're falling in to make those choices to when we're choosing our foods and prominent calciums. Um, Jackie says, I have the digital Hannah refractometer. Can I clean the lens with something other than distilled water? Yeah. Use you can clean any of your meters with alcohol. I use the 91% isopropyl alcohol, and we spray that on the meters, and then we just kind of wick it with we can wipe off all the plastic and everything with the with a tissue, and then the alcohol will actually evaporate off. And if you want to be certain after you clean it with alcohol, you can recalibrate. Put your calibration solution in, and if your calibration solution still reads 7.01 with your pH meter, then you know that it didn't change it. Because I typically find that the alcohol evaporates off, and it does not change my meter reading at all. Just do not push on those sensors. You know, do not push on that pH meter the most. And that refractometer, you break that sensor, you have to replace the whole refractometer. You can't replace the sensor, and that's $200 to replace that that meter. So I think we are pretty much. What time's a good time to call your office? Really liking the 8 vitalometry makes work easier, more energy. Heck yeah, 8 a day. You should be feeling pretty darn good. Um, our office hours are posted on the website, pittsburghalternativehealth.com. You notice I have that I have a link for well, I don't have it up, but we have a website called Doc Misak, DocMisak.com. And on Doc Misak, you will find a link to vitalometry. You'll find a link to Pittsburgh Alternative Health. You'll find a link to the coalition. It says you can join, but you really can't. It does allow you to kind of go through the steps of it, but we haven't got it fully set up yet. It gives you an idea of where we are going with everything. And but you can call the office anytime and leave a message, and we'll get back to you. Right now with the COVID, I am short staffed. I don't have any of my, I haven't had my typical staff there. I have my daughters because they're family just coming in and helping me out. And we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can. But we would turn around and I do video consults through Zoom meetings. I do phone consults. If you're able to run your own numbers and want some guidance, I will do that. We're working on bringing that computer program. We are so close to having that computer program available to you where you take your numbers, put them in through the coalition, and it's going to tell you the basics of what you're supposed to do. So you're welcome, Patty. My pleasure. Honestly, my pleasure. Happy Memorial Day to everyone. Yes, happy Memorial Day to all of you. How can I tell if oxalates are not for me, Jackie? That's where you do the organic acid testing that we talked about. We talked about organic acid testing on the mold show. I think there's a show right before the mold show with where I had Jill on, where I talked. I was called like Back to Analytics or something like that, and I talked about organic acid testing. Gives a great amount of information. Tells whether you're uh,
You read, you did read my results live. I don't know which show though. I'll have to go back and look.
yeah, that's been quite a while since we did that, but I think we may have pulled some of your results up that day too. Do you remember?
Yeah, I just don't remember what show it was. I can't remember.
Okay.
But it wasn't there. I know that you went over it because I was shocked because I wasn't allowed to see it until we did the show.
Yeah.
That was a long week.
So Annie, I've rambled today. Any?
I haven't.
Okay.
Sounds good. Basics seem to be like everybody wants it. They need to know, why am I reading my bricks? Why does this number matter? And I think you've covered that. I think it's wonderful. Not rambly. Good stuff.
Good. Glad you guys think so. So anybody, God bless you all. Have a great weekend. Enjoy it. I'm gonna hopefully end this show appropriately, but just take care and be well. Stay well. We'll see you guys.